Hey everybody, this is Galahad with Holy Grail Labs going over installation tips and a couple other features for both variants of the new 12 fuse 2002 replacement fuse boxes. Starting with the older units, ending in part number 373. This is what your original box will look like. They're a little bit hard to tell apart from the top, but the way that some of the top fuses are connected together is different. If you look at the bottom side, the early units are going to have these horizontal blades and the late units don't. If you've got the early cars, everything's just going to be on these individual plugs. So you pull out the plug and in the one, transfer it over to the corresponding spot on the other one, and do that for all of them and you're good to go. And then you take the red side of the included, or the clip side of the included grounding wire and attach it to the little grounding post here. Make sure that's seated nice and tight. And then you run the other side down through the hole for the fuse box before you clip it in. And then this side is going to be long enough to go and catch your ground point on the fender. Now, the later cars have a slightly different setup where a lot of the cables are wired together into these plug things. So, you know, you've got half a dozen of them at a time or something. Now, you are going to need to modify one of these slightly. If we take a look at the replacement unit, I have the little ground pin here. I had it way off in a corner, and that didn't work. We ended up stressing the wire in prototype testing, so I moved it to here, where there isn't, in the original fuse box, there aren't any blades there, so you're not going to have any wires, but the original cage that BMW made had the provision for a wire here. It's never going to be used because there isn't a way for it to plug into anything. So you've just got to cut that off so that there's enough clearance for the ground wire to plug in right there. I decided to do it that way instead of putting it other places on the board because this was this interfered the least with the sort of the higher current side of things. This is the ground pin for the LEDs. And I didn't want it to stress anything out, and I didn't want to interfere with the high current actual fusing reliability of this. So just a little bit of a modification there, and that makes the pin location on both variants the same. Makes the plastic a little easier to design. So once you've made that modification, you can just plug everything in, move all of the large plugs over, and it'll work fine. Then it's the same. Plug in the ground wire here, snake it through, slot it in. The original fuse boxes came with little flat gaskets that deteriorated into this hardened rubber schmoo. And we decided to change the design slightly and use an O-ring. And we decided to do that because it's a standard part size. So if you ever need a replacement, you can just buy one. They're very inexpensive. And we thought that was better for the long term in case, something happens to the company. You are not stuck trying to source a part that can't be purchased anymore. You can just go buy an O-ring. And if you ever need an O-ring, I don't know the size off the top of my head, but that information will be available, so you don't have to go figure out what size it is. You'll also get a brand new replacement cover. Now, one thing I noticed during testing was that if you take a look at this is a vintage OEM fuse box, and if you put the new covers on to the box, there's a huge amount of stress there's a huge amount of stress right here. You can see that it bowing the cover out here, and then on these sides as well. If you take a look at a vintage cover, you don't have exactly the same problem. It's less pronounced. And I think that's because the newer covers have a slightly different latch shape. But even if you look at this cover, like you can see a stress crack here, and similar cracking on the other side. And I designed the new plastic housing to fit really nicely with the new covers, so there isn't all that bowing on either side. It's still, it's not going to go anywhere, but you're also not putting a lot of stress on the cover latches and creating a point of failure in the future. Okay, the last point of note that's a really cool feature on these is the little LEDs that tell you if your fuse is blown or not. So if you have the switch in the off position, all the LEDs are off, and we generally recommend people keep the switch in the off position unless they're actively looking at their fuse box, because it is a small drain, but it is an additional drain on the battery, and if you don't drive your car super frequently, it can just drain your battery that much faster. But, if you drive your car frequently, you can leave it on. Not that big of a deal. And if you flick them on, they tell you if your fuse is, in this case, it's missing, but if your fuse is blown, it'll be red. If it's not powered, they'll be off. But if you have a good fuse, it's green. So you don't need to, the old style ones, you could just look at the top of it and see if the metal strip was intact or not, to have a decent indication of whether or not the fuse was good. But the newer style fuses, it can be a little hard to tell sometimes. This is just a really nice visual indication that your fuse is good to go. I think that pretty much covers it for the overview of the new 2002 12 fuse boxes. I'm very happy to start getting these out to people, and I'm excited for people to enjoy their car without worrying about electrical problems.